Hello, I'm Lloyd Moss, your host for another edition of Active Aging, the program that introduces you to vital and interesting people who prove that age is no barrier to a fulfilling and productive life. Their stories disprove the myth that getting older means losing one's creativity or zest for living. People like Irving Feller, he's a native of Brooklyn, New York, but you'll see that his heart and soul are in the American West.
Use the rain stick and to make music. Yeah.
And Roy Eaton, who has revived a concert career in piano after a 50-year hiatus. Join us now. Also continuing a lifelong passion, the pianist Roy Eaton. What propelled this extraordinary man to restart a career in classical piano, going from child prodigy at age 7 to successful concert pianist at age 77, despite an interval of 50 years?
My major experiences have all started with things that looked like handicaps on the surface, but really turned out to be catalysts. First thing, I was born black, but my mother was very, very helpful in helping me to almost use prejudice as an asset rather than a liability. She said, you're black in America, and so in order to get credit for doing 100%, you have to do 200%. So you can do it, do it. I loved music, and that was clear from the time I was 3 or 4. My older sister was taking piano lessons, and every time she would get a lesson and come home and play it, I would play it without having a teacher, and so that my mother said, well, you know, I should give you lessons too. Well, my first teacher, when she saw that I had that joy in music, she says, no, you're wasting time. He'll never play the piano. Why did she say that for? That just made me more determined to prove to her I could play the piano. Not only could I play, but as I told you, I won my first competition after studying for about 6 months and ended up playing Carnegie Hall when I was 7. So it was just my will or willfulness or stubbornness and my love for music. I just knew that's what I was supposed to do in my life. My career was moving along very nicely. I won the Chopin Award from the Kosciuszko Foundation. And then Uncle Sam came in and said, you're in the Army now. And that sort of put things to a grinding halt when I was 23. It was right in the middle of the Korean War. And I knew that I did not want to go to the front. I don't think that's an unusual realization of anyone who was drafted into the Army. And so that I decided that since I knew that my biggest asset for the Army would be my talent, I convinced the lieutenant in charge of our unit that we should have a band. And so I didn't play a band instrument, I played the piano, mind you. So he said, I said, well, what do you need? I says, well, there are 2 or 3 people in the band who play band instruments. There's a trumpeter and a drummer and a saxophone player. But I have to go into New York to get some music so that we can make an arrangement for them. So I got to come back to New York in my first weekend in basic training to get music for our band and a baton, one of these batons that cheerleaders used, you know, with a crystal top. And so I ended up spending my special training in front of a trumpeter, saxophone player, and a drummer with my baton, while 4 other poor guys were carrying my rifle. I was the leader of the band. When I came out of the Army, no longer was my publicity of any value, that I had won awards and stuff like that. And so I had to find some way to earn a living, and ended up in advertising. Even in the Army, music was a part of my life. In advertising too. My initial success was on the basis of jingles that I wrote when I was at Young and Rubicam. If I were going to name a Beethoven fifth in my work, it would be the Beefaroni jingle, which was on the air for 30 years. At the time that I did it, the client had said that he wanted to use Yankee Doodle, you know, beef and macaroni. And I told him, no, you should use a tarantella. He said, what's that? I said, well, you want to let people know that you have an Italian product. Use an Italian dance. So he said, all right, we'll try it. 30 years later, and a very successful product that was still on the air. And it started what are we having for lunch? We're having beefaroni. Beefaroni's full of meat. Beefaroni's really neat. Beefaroni, what a treat. Hooray for beefaroni. And so that was my Beethoven fifth. Well, my view of living as not just doing, but more an awareness of how you are being, as being the most important part of your life. My biggest challenge has been to ignore expectations. I am not who anyone else says I am, but I am who I am daily discovering myself to be. And the society in which we live is very powerful in imposing upon you images that they deem to be the image that you are or should be. Earning money should not be the primary goal of your existence, but what contribution are you making so that your life leaves a mark on the world that enhances the lives of your fellow human beings and future generations? That's what your life should be about. Favorite composer? I think, well, there are 2 that are pretty close. First, Chopin. His music really speaks to me. And also recently, within the last 20 years, I've discovered the music of Scott Joplin. And I've discovered him as an African American, I would say, because I feel that the assumptions that are made when someone is African American about who you are and how you are supposed to be can be very narrow and very unrealistic. And it was true of Joplin. Almost all of his compositions are called rags. But he took that form, just like Chopin took a very brutish peasant dance called the mazurka and made a wonderful classical, wrote wonderful classical compositions based on the form. He took the rags and wrote classical compositions. He intended to be and saw himself as a classical composer. The pianist who I admire more than any other, past, present, I'm even looking ahead into the future, is the gentleman whose picture is right there, Arthur Rubinstein. As you see, I'm in the background there. He was at a visit to Manhattan School of Music, where I am on the faculty, and I was able to talk with him personally. Currently, there's also another young pianist who I have very high hopes for, and that's Yevgeny Kissin. And I think those are the two that I would say are in the forefront of my mind, that have that. In Pianist, it's like, it's comparable to the ping in Pavarotti's voice that make him so unique among all other tenors. You know, there's something about the quality that his voice had that nobody else had. And I would say the same thing for me is true of for Rubinstein in the past and Yevgeny Kissin in the present. Being a black concert pianist is difficult in the mainstream. It does not prevent me from using my talent in ways that I find productive and very satisfying. For example, I love to play at nursing homes and elder care centers and hospitals and places like that, because I feel that many elements of my music have a healing power. In fact, my first album was called Meditative Chopin, which was intended to allow a person to draw on their inner self, to draw on the powers that are natural to everyone, but which are not discovered by everyone. And that is the power that is within all of us, to heal. Aging is a challenge because, as anyone who is experiencing the aging process knows, some things which you are able to do when you're very young and do very easily, you cannot do quite as easily, but that does not mean that your activities have to stop or shut down. They simply have to be modified. And I think that's how I have approached the challenges of aging. I swim at least 3 times a week, and I do yoga and meditation every day, and so that it's been a stimulus, it's been a spur to keep myself healthy. And I think the fact that the meditation has been a major factor in it actually reverses the aging process. My best advice to people who are living in their golden years is, I guess, maybe the way I just phrased that, to view it as that in fact, now that you are less driven, or there's less of a need for you to worry about income and daily routine, is the time for you to really rediscover whatever it is that is your passion. You should live your life passionately.
You can see more of Roy Eaton at his website, www.royeaton.com, because lives with passion are something we at Active Aging are all for. As our stories demonstrate, age is just a number, not a barrier to an interesting and creative life. Before we sign off, a special thanks to the volunteers who bring their expertise to Active Aging and are currently working on new programs. I'm Lloyd Moss.